So one of the things I think you mentioned at the hearing too was having a period of time that's a reasonable amount of time for people to come into compliance, and also to make sure that we are well staffed and ready to go as we start this program. So we talked about in the memo having a kind of a slower startup period at the end of this year. We will work with 25 applicants and bring them in through the program. So that'll be a chance for us to kind of slowly acclimate to the program and make sure we've got everything in working order. Yes, sir.
And thank you, Leslie. And it is my understanding from your comprehensive memo that the 15 that are on the waiting list will be included in those 25 applicants. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And what will they pay?
It would be the same pricing as 2020. So if we
Okay,
go with
they'll
an
get the
incentive,
benefit
they
too.
would get the reduced pricing. Correct. So, and then as we move into next year, that's when we anticipate we'll be more staffed and ready. We'll have everything in place, and that's when we'd start to notify the 450 folks who are out there that there's a program. They should start to come to us. We would offer the incentive of pricing if that's something that you're amenable to. And we'd start to see more of an influx of activity at that point. And then in 2021, we would move into just a period of regular pricing. We'd continue to notify folks that haven't come to meet with us yet. And then we'd let folks know also that if they don't come in by the end of 2021, then we would be into a period with some penalty fees potentially. And that's something we'd like your feedback on as well. So the incentives and the penalty program. So that's the timeline overall. This long list of things is on the second page of your memo, but these are all the different activities and events that we're working on, next steps that we're working on to make sure we're in good shape for this program. It looks like it cut off the bottom piece a little bit here, and I won't go through the list, but you'll see some show and tell here in a little bit from Amy, who's been working on the web page with a team of us, and our handouts, our application forms, and so on. So I think I can probably move on because you've seen this list, but let me know if you have any questions about that. One of the things we'd like to do through this program, and this may be something that then can be applied more in more situations, but to make our process a little bit more streamlined and efficient for applicants so that as they come in and they apply, they basically would make one application. They'd have a staff person who can help shepherd their application through the process behind the scenes, because typically when you come into the county for a land use approval and then a building approval, you have to make two applications and you can't start the one until you've finished the other. We'd like to try to make this a bit more seamless if we can, and allow them to just submit their materials up front and make it a little bit easier. If you have a question or comment.
Well, I do. It's like closing the barn door after the horses run away, though, in a little bit. I don't know, maybe if you can answer it, Leslie, or maybe Karin or Amy would have to answer it. But it seems like probably most of the properties that are going to go through this are going to be right outside of the Estes Valley Joint Planning Area, right? Because there's a cap there on the number of vacation rentals. We're at the cap. And so this is going to, I mean, I would think that this is going to be a free-for-all in all those areas just on the edge of the Estes Valley planning area. Have you guys thought about that or analyzed that in any way? And maybe it's already, if we've got 450 operating illegally, probably they're all right there anyway. They might already all be there. I don't know.
We haven't done the address identification yet. That's one of the things that we're contracting to do here in the next couple of months. So we don't know for sure where they all are. We think that they're probably in mixed locations, mostly in the foothills, probably a lot around Estes, and then Red Feather Lakes and so on. And then there's probably a fair number of them that are along the Front Range as well. But we'll know more in a couple of months about where exactly.
Okay.
But we don't right now.
Okay.
Anybody have anything to add to that? Okay. And on the topic of Estes too, there's a good chance that we may be assuming the development review services for the unincorporated part of the valley in 2020. And if we do, then those Estes Valley vacation homes that are currently permitted would basically roll into our program as grandfathered uses. And so we don't require a registration process the way the town does. And so they wouldn't have to go through our processes unless they we're changing a use or changing ownership or something. But so that's something probably for further discussion. We also were thinking that the cap that exists in place there now that's in the unincorporated valley might carry over as kind of maintain the status quo for that area. But that's something we could talk about further too if you wanted to.
Is there any minimum number of days you have to rent a year in order to be qualified as a short-term vacation rental? I mean, if you do it one weekend a year, are you really a short-term vacation rental?
We didn't specify that in the.
You're shaking your head no,
Yeah.
or Matt.
Matt.
Because the reason I ask
Yeah.
is because the El Paso County assessor just announced that he was going to tax them all as commercial property. They're going to be taxed as commercial ventures, and so I mean that's like a 400% increase in your taxes. I assume that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to violate our process now. I mean, if that happens here, even if it's a simple process, they won't want to go through it because of the tax implications, I would think. Yeah, it's John. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention at Friday's CCI legislative meetings, one of the proposals from Gunnison County, I believe, was to look at various options for addressing this assessment issue regarding short-term rentals. I think, as the chair alluded to, most of them are assessed at the residential rate, and I think there's some discussion about whether or not there should be some criteria to consider, as far as assessing them at the commercial rate. I think one of the issues that were raised in the discussion was an equity issue, that the more traditional lodging and accommodations facilities are charged at the commercial rate, and there might be some equity issues. But I think the chair's point is also well taken, that it's a big jump in in property taxes. But that's something they're considering, and that might be part of the legislative agenda for CCI, and we should at least be aware of that.
The
And
problem with specifying, if you do 5 or less a year, is there's no really way to enforce or determine that. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know how many people, we don't know if we have 4 or 6 or whatever. There's no way to tell
Or
how
if you-
often.
Or if you live there half the year, and I mean, there's no way to tell.
It sounds like a good idea, but I think it's impossible to
Practical.
administer.
I think
Yeah.
most of the people that are going to come up in the evaluation process of finding out who's operating out there are going to be those people that are advertising.
Mhm.
And so, if I'm doing it once a year to a couple out of Florida or something like that, I would imagine I'm not advertising this thing on a large scale, and it's probably not going to hit the radar, but, who knows? But, yeah, your point's taken.
So Eric, help me remember, a year or so ago, you and I and Alexis from the assessor's office looked at this, and I think that we used vendor data for what might be the number of units countywide, and then looked at what the implications of tax would be. Do you remember that, or am I
you
making
remember
it
it.
up?
I think there was a study committee of the legislature that was looking at alternatives to Gallagher because of and that was where they were also looking at having different regions for Gallagher. And one of the proposals they had was to change how you assess vacation rentals, and maybe assessing them as commercial properties, and this would bring in a bunch of money to different counties. And at that point, they dropped it. They decided they weren't going to go forward with that recommendation.
But I think you and I and Alexis looked at it for Larimer County. What would the revenue impacts be?
And my recollection is she didn't think it would be a huge
That's what I remember.
amount of extra income to Larimer County. Now, it might be more critical to a more rural county where a big chunk of their economy is tourism and vacation rentals. So maybe to Gunnison County or Summit County, it's a bigger deal than it is for Larimer County.
If I may, based on the information I have in front of me, the interim committee bill that you were referring to as part of the Gallagher, the Tabor-Gallagher discussions, which went away, which they didn't move forward,
Right.
did look at determining, based on the number of days that the residence or the property is made available for short-term rentals. But as you said, that was not brought forward. So, and apparently it's an issue. It's more of an issue in the mountain communities like I guess Estes Valley and Summit
Summit
County,
County.
places like that. And they're saying another implication of this, and I'm sure we all know this, another implication of this short-term rental issue is that it basically takes properties, homes off the market, for long-term rental. So it can, in some ways, undermine efforts at dealing with workforce or affordable housing.
The only other thing I wanted to bring up quickly is the assessor's process is somewhat independent of planning and building. So whatever we decide in terms of permitting these things, the assessor looks at it the way the assessor looks at it.
I wonder if he's considering.
Okay.
All right.
Well, great.
So just a couple more slides here, but so one of the things we wanted to touch base with you, I'm not sure why it's cutting off the bottom row there, but this looks a little funky up here too, so I don't know what's going on with
See
you.
Linda scream.
There's some settings. 'Cause
Lou
we
knew how
did-
to change it.
Yeah, Lou knew how to change
I'm not
it,
gonna
right?
touch
Something about
it.
the resolution of the screen. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's all I understood.
So the bottom line gives the building fees, and this is in your memo
Oh,
too
of
on
course, that's
page,
hidden.
I think it's on page 3 of your memo, so.
Eric's,
By the building department.
Eric's
yeah.
retirement fund.
Yeah.
So,
Public trust fund.
Joining in now.
I know. See, it's just
Oh,
empowering
there we
on.
go.
Encouraging
so we
on, pushing
looked
his
at this a couple different ways.
Yeah.
For how we might price for incentives and what kind of discount we'd offer. Now, of course, there's the trade-off of if we're trying to come up with a program that's revenue neutral here so that we can hire the staffing that we need as much as possible to support the program. So, of course, the more we reduce the fees, the less able we are to provide the staffing. And so we're trying to find the right balance here. So we looked at this a couple of different ways, and of course, we could look at it other ways if you choose. But you can see there what the savings might be for a typical applicant, and then the table at the back of your memo also looks at what the overall revenues might be for the program based on those different ways of looking at it. Again, here, sorry, it kind of barely cut off the bottom. So what we did was look at kind of a low to medium estimate of how many might start to come through in 2020, and then use that to determine what we think we can afford from a staffing standpoint, not necessarily what we need. We probably would need a few more staff, but we think we can absorb other parts of this program into the parts of the department staffing that we have, or bring in some on-call services if we need them, if we find that there's more of an influx and a faster pace of these applications coming in early in 2020. So what we're proposing is that we'd have, in essence, a person and a half to support this program, plus some on-call services as needed as we move forward. So that's what we're proposing. And I think that brings us back to you. We'd like your feedback or answer any questions that you have about this program and what we're doing to gear up for September 1st. There's one other kind of housekeeping thing I need to let you know about too. And we found that we did not advertise in 2 newspapers for the hearing in June. We only did 1. So that was a bit of a mistake, and we need to do a supplemental hearing in August to make sure that we notify in 2 newspapers, and we'll have another opportunity for folks to come and speak if they haven't already spoken at one of the hearings, but we just want to make sure we cover the bases and do our noticing requirement correctly. So you will see this on your,
Published in 2 newspapers?
we have to publish
Code
for
amendment.
changes to the code, we do, and that was something that just got missed as
Any
we were
ordinance or land use code?
just in the land use code.
Is
So
that our rule or statute?
that is our rule, not statute, I think, right, Frank? Yeah. So we're really covering our bases on this. We sort of thought about we didn't need to do it at first, and then we decided we will do it just to make
That
sure
sounds
we've.
like a dumb rule.
Maybe we'll get that whole family
Nobody
to come
reads
back.
those in one paper. Why are we advertising in 2
Family of
papers?
five people that.
And the key about bringing this
Can we
back
change
was optimally to not let old people talk, but only let new people talk.
Old people can't talk?
No, old people
Apply
like
to the board?
people
too?
that talked in previous applications or
Okay.
previous areas.
Yeah.
speakers.
Yeah.
So-
So this will be
so it
published
wasn't,
narrowly. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be published, as you see here, basically for members of the public who've not previously commented. Our intent is to put it on the agenda in the afternoon, and there may be some people who do show up who didn't know about it the first time, but we just wanted you to be aware so that when you see that on your agenda, it'll be on the Planning Commission's agenda also. That was another place where it doesn't technically say we have to do that, but we want to make sure we're covering our bases.
What was
So
the effective date of the change?
The effective date is September 1st. Yeah, so that still gets us kind of close all the loops
Okay.
before that date. So
It is,
yes,
thank you, Leslie. It is my recollection that also on October 21st with the Planning Commission, we have scheduled a time for discussion from the consultant and others on the wireless facilities. Will these two items be on that particular, that's at 4:30. Will this be at the regular time? It's 6:30?
yes, that's correct.
Okay, that answers that question. Then
Yep.
I have two more questions related to the fee structure.
Are we doing it 6:30 or 3?
You said
No,
afternoon.
so you're talking about the Planning Commission's hearing.
Right.
Joint meeting, are you
But
talking
then
about
we
the
have, at 4:30,
Okay,
we
so
have,
let me be clear. So Planning Commission has a hearing at 6:30 on the 21st, and this item will be on the Planning
Just a
Commission's
regular
agenda.
meeting.
Right. Before that, in the afternoon, from 4:30 to 6, you have a work session on wireless.
Oh,
And
I
that's
see.
with everybody. That's you, Board of County Commissioners, and the Planning Commission. And then the Monday after, this item will be on your agenda for the commissioners.
thank
That
you
make
for,
sense?
yes,
Okay.
thank you for clarifying. My two questions are as follows. Regarding the proposed full-time person and half-time person, I think for administrative purposes,
Yes.
will that be continuous, or will that be in the next couple of years to
Right. Great
help get
question.
this program off the ground? And then could you talk about that a little bit,
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes, so good question. So our intention is that it would be limited term positions through the end of 2021 because we anticipate there's going to be higher levels of activity for the first 2 years, and then it will taper off and we can absorb the activity into our regular work.
Both on the
plan.
land use side and on the building code
Correct,
side?
Correct.
Thank you. You've answered my first question. And then my second question relates to I'm trying to be deliberative here, colleagues.
Go ahead.
Right.
Keep going.
We just hired 2 new building inspectors. I just met them today.
One inspector and one plans examiner, which is why we don't anticipate any new building staff for this
Right.
program.
Growing government.
But
Okay.
again, this is revenue neutral. This is what we anticipate that we can cover through the revenues that come in from this program. So we will not be asking for general funds for this.
And that's an excellent segue to my second question, which is regarding the two percentages as far as discounts to the fee structure, 25% and 20%. Are both of those, I mean, if we went with the higher discount, the 25%, does that generate, I know there's a low and high estimate, will that generate enough revenue to make this as self-sustaining as possible?
You know, the 5% difference doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference. It does make some difference. You can
About
see the
5%.
numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think if I were to make a recommendation, I would probably recommend going with the 80% just because that gives us a little bit more of a cushion. But, you know, it's really up to you and how you'd like to guide us in that. And again, the 5% isn't going to make or break the program, I think. And so if you think it would be more ideal for our applicants and customers coming through to have the bigger incentive, we could work with that.
Thank you.
Any
You have
other?
one more? Didn't you have one more?
Yeah.
or not?
Actually, no, that covers my
Oh, okay.
questions.
All right, so 20 or 25%, or some other rate, or do you not care?
I think it should be 25%. I don't think 20% is like the standard Macy's sale. That's not much of an incentive. I don't think.
I don't know.
I actually think it should be more than 25% if you want to encourage
It,
people to come
it brings
in.
you in.
I
It brings
know,
you in
yeah,
every
yeah.
time.
I'm addicted to shopping, but I think it should be 25.
On $1,000 permit, it's $50.
Yeah.
I think, you know, you need to be mindful of what it costs to run the program. I'd probably support 20, but I don't really care.
Do you have a preference?
Do you have a preference or not?
I'll go with the recommendation offered by the Community Development Director.
Which was
20.
20. Okay, there you go.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
You're the one that always wants to waive fees.
Oh, no.
That's really ironic.
I never want to waive fees. Do you have any questions or concerns about the revenue neutral approach to staffing the program and the request for 1.5 limited term employees through 2021?
No.
Any questions, problems?
And
The only
we'll
problem
come-
will be it'll be tough to fill limited term positions, right? I mean,
Good point.
It may be. You know, surprisingly, when we advertised recently for a part-time administrative position, we got 100 applications.
Oh, really?
So that that was encouraging that, that there are
Okay.
folks out there. We'll,
That's good.
we'll see how it goes. If we have problems, we
Yeah.
may have to rethink it. But
Commissioner's job was a limited term position, wasn't it?
Yeah, I keep applying for that, don't I?
Whose job was?
Ours.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
God.
yeah.
I keep applying for that one,
Your
don't I?
case.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
After reviewing the proposed rollout timeline and list of materials and work in progress, do you have any other suggestions to better serve customers?
So this is just the catch-all question. If there's anything else you want to share with us before we get going in September, this is the chance.
How did you figure the penalty for, I guess if you go into 2022, you get or is it 2021? 2022, you get a
2022.
penalty? How did you, because it looks like the percentages are different. The building permit is 100% penalty. These other ones look like they're 50%, if I have to guess.
That's correct. Yeah, just because our planning fees are higher, and you may want to talk a little bit about the
Will that
building.
discourage people? It would have that much of a penalty? Or these
Well-
are people you already know are violating, so it's not like they have a
That's
choice,
right.
right?
This wouldn't apply to anybody who's newly coming in that year. So they're just starting a
Okay.
business that year. If they weren't identified through our 450 list, and if we hadn't notified them 2 or 3 times by the time they got to that point, they wouldn't. This
Okay.
penalty would
It
not
just seemed a
apply.
little high to me, but I guess it's one way to make up some revenue, and
Yeah.
you don't want it so low that they don't see any incentive to, I'll just wait until the
Yeah.
penalty period because it's not that much more. So I guess I don't, it seemed a little high to me at first, but
Okay.
if these guys are okay with it, I'm fine with it.
Well, if they look at it that they come in at the very early stage, they're saving
A lot
way
more, yeah,
in,
you're
then they're
right.
really saving,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
quite
kind
a
of like
bit of money. But
we
if they
mark
come
the
in that
prices
middle,
up to lower them even more, right? Yeah, there's a shopper. She knows.
And on the building side, it's already in the fee schedule that we can assess a penalty fee for work done without a permit up to 100% of the building permit fee.
Oh, we
So
have that policy?
That's in
Okay.
the adopted fee schedule, and that's
Okay.
in the building code.
Okay,
So it
good.
was easy for us.
That's better.
Planning had to figure out how they wanted to structure the fee, and that is one bit of follow up here. Is in our building permit fee schedule, we have a set fee for vacation homes in the Estes Valley. We don't have one yet for short-term rentals countywide. So if the commissioners are okay with that, I'll bring that back through an admin matters meeting on Tuesday morning to amend our fee schedule just to have that set.
Mm-hmm.
And if for Estes Park, we set that set fee at $200. It turns out that wasn't really enough to cover our costs because it took us more time than we'd first anticipated. So now we're suggesting a $300 set fee for short-term rentals countywide.
What is a standard home building inspection? Or does it depend on the size or value?
Well, we don't charge for inspection. We charge for the value of the whole house. So that for a new home itself, the total fees might be, I'm just guessing off the top of my head, $15,000, and most of that is impact fees, planning fees. The building permit fee itself is probably $5,000 to $7,000, depending on how big the home is.
Okay.
And then we don't charge for the inspections. We just that's included in the permit fee. So with this is a little different. We're not basing it on valuation. So a regular short-term rental is the same fee whether it's 500 square feet or 5,000 square feet, etc.
So this is a lot less than what new construction would typically be
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
permit and
we're just
inspection?
hoping to set the building fee enough to just recover the cost of the plan review, inspection, and permit tech processing.
Okay.
Well, the facilities that have, and I don't mean to say facility like it's some kind of institutional use, but will the vacation rentals that have gone through the process and been recognized and permitted, will they be listed someplace accessible to the public or
Yeah.
not?
So that's a great question. That's one of the things we're working toward having available within 6 months or so after we have folks that have come through the process. We've talked about trying to create a map or at least a list of addresses and contacts so that if you're a neighbor and you're having problems or you're not sure if the nearby property is a short-term rental, but you could have a resource that you could look at and then find the contact information. So the goal is to have that online somewhere associated with that. And that might be a good segue to, we've got our web page that we're working on too, if you'd like to see any of that.
Well, I can imagine that being a benefit for a vacation rental owner
Mm-hmm.
because my sister is a very diligent consumer. And so if she saw an ad saying, you know, that
And she's
the-
not.
we have the county approval and there's a link,
Advertise that.
I,
Inspected, licensed, whatever.
she would follow that.
Yeah.
We would end up in one that was legal.
Right,
So they-
right.
They
for,
do,
for compliance, yeah.
they do that up in Estes. The registration number is part of the advertising on whatever site they decide to do it on, Linda.
That seems like a benefit to the owner.
Yeah, it does.
It's an
Right.
added value.
Good, thanks.
Exactly.
So what,
Something positive for government,
on the other hand,
Mm-hmm.
if someone is,
Mr. Negative.
is not like the kind of person that wants to get Linda's family to, you know, come with the Groupon or whatever.
Golden Girls Club.
Yeah. What do we really? What ability do we really have from an enforcement perspective on these? If somebody is misbehaving, if they're
Yeah.
illegally
Yeah.
running it.
So we haven't talked about revocations or anything like that, but if somebody was a frequent offender and we had recurring complaints from neighbors or other things going on, I think we'd at that point be probably looking at revoking permits or some other mechanism. You know, if it's a one-time deal and they just happen to have a bad tenant, you know, then and they straighten up, you know, that wouldn't be the kind of thing. But we haven't really talked about that in terms of exactly all the tools that we might use to enforce along those lines, other than our typical enforcement approaches that we use for code compliance.
Except that typically, if it's the most typical code compliance thing is an illegal junkyard or an unpermitted finish in a house, and you can you can haul the trash off,
Right.
or you can tear the house finish out, and you can charge the person. What the hell are you going to do in this instance? You're
Yeah.
going to tell them they can't rent it, then what are you going to do?
I think you could get an injunction through the courts.
I think
Yeah.
we'd probably come back through the public meeting process, just like we do any other code
Yeah.
compliance violation. Let you guys say you need to apply within X amount of days, or it goes over to the county attorneys.
So what? Well, okay, but they've already applied and potentially and been revoked. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Be a
that's
lot
on
of-
that's on down the line.
A
That's
lot of work.
right. Yep.
Mhm.
So,
It would be.
Tough. Okay.
but our first front is to focus on getting folks aware of and knowledgeable that this program exists, so they can come in and get and be compliant.
In reality, if they do start charging these things, assessing these things like commercial property, there probably will be more incentive for the owners to rent to anyone, to rent more frequently, larger groups, anything like that. I mean, I think,
Potentially so.
well, because the taxes will go up, they'll probably try to use it harder. You know,
Right.
maybe, I don't know. So it might actually increase your.
And we do
compliance
get those
effort.
questions now, Commissioner. But again, as Eric was saying, it's two separate. I mean, we're just doing the permitting and the land use side of it. Whatever happens tax-wise is kind of out of our control.
And then the other question, I guess, is if you did like a typical use, if you abandon it or don't use it for what is it, a year, Matt, it goes away.
Yeah, but once you get an approval of this, you're not a non-conforming use. You're
Only a non-conforming use would if you stop the use, does it go away? So an approved use for a vacation rental,
Is
if you
approved.
decided to move here for your kid or something, lived in the house for 5 years, and you got the approval already, if they move away or whatever, then it can go right back through with no additional permitting or requirements.
So we've talked about what do we call it, revalidating process every 2 years, where we would send has anything changed? Have you done any construction? They sign it, get it back to us, and they're good to go for another
Okay.
2 years.
Okay. So as long as they keep
Changed
up with that.
owner, yeah, whatever.
All right. Anything else, guys? We need to move on, probably.
Okay.
One last quick
Okay,
question.
go ahead, John.
Regarding the community outreach that you're suggesting in your timeline and your phases, it says individual contacts. What are you thinking as far as individually contacting folks who need to engage in this
Yeah. So
process?
we're in the process of contracting with a company called Host Compliance that does the address identification, and then they will also work with us. We'll create the content, and they'll do the mailings to those individual addresses to let them know that this program exists and that here's some ways that they can come in and seek compliance.
The outreach won't just be entirely electronic. It will also send real letters.
Right, right. So those 450 or so would get a letter some sort of information in the mail. In addition to that, we would do a more broad sweeping outreach, with social media and that sort of thing to let the community know that this is in the works. So, all right, anything else? Okay, thank you.
All right.
The only other item that we have on the agenda for today is director updates, and I do have a handful of those. So one of them, and Matt, since you're still sitting up here, we had a conversation last week about the Magpie operation and didn't quite complete that conversation. I think what we'd like to do is come back to that on August 12th again, just so that you've had some time to think about that or give feedback. And Matt was going to contact the COGCC in the meantime, right? Do you want to chime in, Matt, and talk about what you're proposing to do?
So right now, I guess our question was Magpie oriented, but I think it was really to look at overall, what do we do with the existing applications that are in process, and what should our protocol be for the next year or so while we go through adopting regulations and the state does. We'll come back to you on the 12th and finish that conversation. But what I would like to do is ask that the board give me clearance to call the COGCC and request that for the next couple of weeks, while you guys deliberate in your minds, that no additional permits be issued without the conversation with the county. And that's it. I don't think that there's going to be any that come up. It's just, we have that right now to ask the COGCC to not approve something without first consulting with us, and that's all we would ask. And if they do, then we would come talk to you.
What have we done in the past with permits? We have commented during the public comment period.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we just do that?
And these are all existing permits, so that comment period is passed.
So they're existing permits that have been approved?
They're in process, and they've gone past that that initial comment period, and they've been in the process.
Have we commented on any of them during the public comment?
Just the Kaufman one
But the Kaufman one is still in process, or has that been withdrawn?
is still in process.
I understood from the
That doesn't seem like-
memo that we received recently from I think the attorneys representing Magpie, is they were looking at 4 well pads or bunkers, they call them.
They have Bunker 8 pad.
And the Bunker 8 pad, it seemed like that's the one they wanted to move forward on, but the other 3 they were holding off on. But the Bunker 8 pad is not the Kaufman proposal, is it?
It's south of 402.
So
Every month, the COGCC asks the oil and gas operators to prioritize the pad sites that they want looked at for evaluation in that comment period. So Magpie was asking.
Kaufman was not a Magpie proposal.
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
yeah,
Are you sure?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I thought it was different. Okay.
Magpie has 3 different sites.
Okay.
They got 4. I only know of the 3, but
They sent us a letter.
well, they
didn't
have an individual
Yeah, they
well
sent us-
site.
The one that's on their personal property or something.
that's right.
That's 8. That's the
That's
one that's
Bunker 8.
called 8, I think.
Bunker 8, which has multiple holes in it. Yeah, it's like eight holes, I think.
So, what are you asking
So our
us?
request would be until we have the conversation on the 12th that we be allowed to talk to COGCC and tell them that we would request that they approve nothing during that period without consulting first with the county.
And what's the conversation
That's
on
like
the 12th?
2 weeks, 3 weeks,
And what is the conversation on the 12th?
about what you want us to do for the rest of the oil and gas wells for the remaining until we have regulations in
I
place.
think we've answered that
Well, I can tell
5
you-
different times.
I think I can tell you what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply our current procedures until we adopt additional rules or regulations.
And I think the board said that clearly is
I
direction.
don't think John said that, but I.
The board. The board isn't one person. It's a board. I
Well, I
get.
think last meeting we had, it was just kind of, we were gonna come back to it.
Right.
We did, I think.
So
at the
It's
end
how
of it,
we-
said, we'll think
How
about
we
it.
felt we left was that
I
we were gonna
did?
come
I think
back
you
and
said that at
reopen
the
the
end of last meeting.
conversation.
Tell me what I said. What
Yeah,
I
I
mean.
thought-
You had
What
time
don't
to
tell me what I
deliberate
said. Tell me what I meant.
Well, maybe
after you
we-
had
Yeah.
time to consult with our minds on it, yeah.
Eh.
I thought
Yeah,
probably
we
talked
didn't
about it today.
necessarily take that as that the conversation was finished, so we may have misunderstood, but, so,
Well,
You would talk about it. at the
my
end of the
opinion
day.
is that we should grant you the authority to have those conversations with the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission until we give you a more definitive answer, how we want to deal with applications that are in the pipeline until we figure out some kind of regulations. That is my opinion. It may be that I'm in the minority here, and I certainly respect the opinions of all the three commissioners.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. That sounds like a moratorium in effect, which we have talked about, and I'm not in favor of. I think we should treat applications that have been submitted based on what the rules that we had in place at the time they submitted them. I think that's a fair approach. I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that, but I don't share that view.
I agree.
So during that process, just so it's clear, as the local government designee, if an application comes forward to the county, I'll look at it. If it appears that it complies with the state's regulations and is on the proper path, then we will let it proceed forward. If it appears to have some major environmental issue or other concerns that we think are relevant to bring to the board, I'll bring it to the board.
Okay.
And we always ask the local municipalities if they would like the comment period extended.
Which we,
And on occasion, if we have believed there was a significant public health aspect, we've asked for a hearing before the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. I think we've done that once
A
as well,
consultation.
as a
with them.
local government designee, so I think we could do all of those things.
Yep.
what did we ask for on Kaufman?
Kaufman was a big comment period, and
We extended
we asked
that.
to meet with Magpie, with the city of Loveland.
But it was about truck routing
that.
and.
It was about truck routing. It was about
Water
their
reservoir.
pooling. It was about a bunch of things. It was about their water storage facility.
And we wanted,
And there was enough issue raised that one's pretty much sitting on the back burners, and Magpie understands that.
and it was about screening while they were drilling. I think we asked for that, additional screening. Well, I think there was 3 or 4 issues that were substantive, but I mean, I would assume they would address those things.
By the way, there was a site called the Wizard site, which was located over just north of Ptarmigan, along the Poudre River and the
I
flood.
think Karen sent us
floodway.
something about
Karen
that this
brought it
week.
to my attention, but yeah, it got pulled off,
Yeah.
and I verified that on the website the other day. So
Just to further clarify something you said, Matt, you said that based on the decisions today, we would permit applications that are coming in. We would abide by state regulations, and if they meet the state regulations, then those permit applications would go forward based on what the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission decides. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you refer statewide regulations, are you meaning the current regulations that are on the books, or the 16 directors' objective review criteria?
just the ones on the book, so I'm going to look at the director's objective criteria is something that they get to elevate the level of review on those. And I don't really look at all of the well permit stuff. What we look at is based upon Larimer County's situation is where's proximity of schools, other critical facilities, wetlands, floodplains and stuff. I make sure that there isn't anything that really just pops out and causes us any alarm on that, or if I hear from the public or from one of the municipalities.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
so you've got the direction now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
A couple other super quick things. One is a draft agenda for the discussion with Northern Water board members on Wednesday, and Rob's here, I think, yes. So we've had this go back and forth now at the staff level, and just wanted to share it with you so you know what to expect. Okay, thank you. There was some conversation at one point about having a facilitator for the meeting. We do not have a facilitator, so I think the chair of each of the boards will probably be in charge of the discussion back and forth using the agenda as your backdrop for the discussion. So if there's anything you'd like us to send back to them in advance of the meeting in terms of a draft discussion or, I'm sorry, a draft agenda or anything, that's that's where we are now in terms of a draft agenda. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. Do you have anything to add, Rob? Thank you.
So it looks like the discussion is a history, a process review, and we're talking about public engagement. So it's not
Yeah.
substantive to goals that we have should the project go forward. Is that correct?
Not
It's just process
necessarily.
at
I
this
mean, I
point.
think if there's time for that, it would be at the end of the agenda. And then the intent is that the next meeting in September, September 23rd, would be really the meeting that would be focused on that. But certainly if there's work or technical analysis or anything else that you'd like us to be thinking about or cognizant of in the next couple of months as we work on this with their team, that would be a good time to get that out in the
Yeah,
open.
I think before that happens, a work session with our staff that have been negotiating so they can bring us up to speed on what things are important to them, what issues they have looked.
This
Look
meeting's in
forward.
And
2
we
days.
do have time.
This is
Yeah.
just on process.
Oh, I see.
That's right, and we do have time scheduled, I believe, in early September for
Okay.
that conversation to happen between you and us and
Okay.
all of us on
Thank
this
you.
side.
Thanks for this agenda. Two questions that I have. One is for Wednesday's meeting, which is a work session. It'll be recorded. Will it be broadcast as we're?
I don't know. We can check on that.
Yeah, it should say right here.
Right
Yeah.
here. Usually they are.
Yeah,
It should say on the agenda.
Yeah, it's yellow, so it's broadcast.
Great. That answers my first question.
okay.
If we're assuming we can get this fixed, is it going to be in here? Oh, it's in the hearing
It's
room.
downstairs. yeah.
Okay, so it'll probably work.
My second question is, what do you recommend for us, especially me perhaps, the best way to prepare for these discussions on Wednesday? I presume I should go back and review my favorite section in the land use code. And secondly, I should probably go back and read the 2016 MOU. Are there other things I should be reviewing that are manageable in the next 48 hours?
You could go to the webpage that we have posted on our webpage. There's a NISP link there. There's also a link to NISP Talk, which is their public engagement, is Northern's public engagement webpage for NISP. Those, I think, will give you the broad overview. There's the whole EIS is out there linked to this, but I can't recommend that that's a fruitful exercise right now.
Rob, would you be kind enough to send me those links? That'll prompt me to do my best to review them.
Maybe all three of us should get that.
Oh, gosh,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That'll help me too.
Weren't you the A in the river? You could bring your A in?
Uh-oh, don't
So,
start
Would
that
you
again.
Commissioner, respectfully, would you let go
Where's
of
the
that,
little
please?
gavel? Where's the little gavel?
I thought I recognized you. I don't know.
You're out of order.
Can't see any faces.
Little gavel.
So so you know, we have received at least some initial technical information from Northern that is out on referral. We're collecting comments. I would note that even though we have done press releases and done a lot of stuff, to the best of my knowledge, there's been no contact by any citizen or organized group with staff with respect to any of this at this point.
Yet. Yeah.
It's so quiet, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but okay.
It's just process.
Last thing I'll say is that it's my understanding that the Environmental and Science Advisory Board has done, I think on NISP, some analysis of, I know they did it on Halligan's Reservoir, but they may have done some analysis.
In the day, they did provide comments on the draft and
Draft
supplemental
EIS.
That's it.
EIS,
Yep.
supplemental
They did.
draft
There's-
EIS.
Practically, there's probably not enough time to review that, but I bet there's some good information in there.
And on Halligan,
Yeah,
and when we're out of the draft stage, they'll
I
be asked to
know.
comment.
Yeah, it's been,
Yeah.
I mean, permit's been issued, hasn't it?
No.
It has not been?
On,
NISP?
no, I mean, the steps in the process are the final EIS is done, the comment period
Okay.
is completed.
Okay, that's what I meant.
The record of decision, which is the Army Corps' decision process,
That's not
we
been,
anticipate end of year. And then after that, the Army Corps will need to issue permits. So there's two additional real action steps after the EIS that are still to come.
and last thing I'll say, just in the interest of making sure that we have all the information, I believe we were provided with a flow chart about how this works. And I think we have that. I'm going to pull mine out because I think that was very helpful. That was provided by the,
County attorney's office.
thank you, yes.
What staff of ours will be present?
So from our side, we'll have Rob and myself, I think. Are you planning to be there? Maybe. Members from our county attorney staff, probably Bill or Janine, and maybe Frank too. And then Dalen Figs from Natural Resources and somebody from engineering. I'm not sure if Mark's here or not.
Lori.
Perfect.
And Lori,
That's
yes,
what I was
there you are,
wondering.
yeah. So, so we'll have a cross-departmental team to answer questions that you may have.
Do you have anybody from county engineering if there's any questions about road?
Yeah, yeah. I think Mark might be out
Oh,
this
did you say
week,
Mark?
but
Okay.
Mark or Rusty or somebody will be there. Yeah.
Thanks.
And the northern board is not represented there, it's not the whole board. They have
Couple
designated a subgroup of 3 or 4 of their directors who are gonna be the interface with us in this process.
Okay, so that's Wednesday. 2 other quick things. Estes Park, you have a really short hearing this afternoon, so we'll
Yeah, you
make it up
better
to you.
It still starts at 3, whether it's short or not.
So Estes Park, there's a meeting next Monday. We have some online questionnaires and information that should get posted today, tomorrow, for members of the public who want to spend some time online, and that'll be out available through about August 12th. So, and we're really having that conversation around what's the future of land use planning and the IGA for the Estes Valley. So that's happening. Yes, sir.
When will we see the agenda for that meeting?
For the meeting on the 29th,
Yes, ma'am.
I can send it to you later. We've had one that's gone back and forth between staff. The meeting is set up so that there'll be a brief introduction. Tom, I think, did Michelle contact you about doing a brief introduction with the mayor? But to have the elected officials kick it off briefly, and then we'll do a brief presentation with some of the history of the planning and some of the components of the existing IGA and how that works, and then some other examples, actually a lot like the discussion you had back in February in terms of some of the different ideas. And then it's open to the public. We'll have facilitators and roundtable discussions. We've got about 7 facilitators who are going up who can work with the community to have some conversation.
And it's in the former Holiday Inn, right? The old Holiday Inn. It's not?
Yeah. No, it's at Town Hall, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
it says on our calendar it's at that hotel.
Oh, that's, I think.
Are you sure it's not?
May have
does
gotten
say that.
switched back, because there was some conversation early about it being in another location, and now it's back at Town Hall,
Oh,
so.
it is a town hall. Okay.
Leslie?
And apparently there's some rooms upstairs that can accommodate the group discussion part of it, yeah. Yes?
That room with the
2
kitchen.
related questions. What are the expected outcomes of this meeting, and how will those outcomes inform us that this was a successful meeting?
So the goal for the meeting is to share some information about how the current relationship and cooperative agreement works, and to give some information about alternatives to that and that the community may want to consider. And then it's to hear feedback from people about what they're hoping to see in the future. And we've asked a variety of questions about, kind of starting with big ideas and what's their general vision for how we can be working on land use and planning in the next 3 to 5 years, and then drilling down a bit more specifically into some of the topics about how we work together on things like annexation and development review planning and planning around the comp plan. So then they can have some specific conversation around those topics using our existing agreement and some of the other examples like Loveland, Fort Collins, a few out-of-county examples as a bit of a backdrop for that conversation.
So this meeting on the 29th, it's aligning with our recommendations, at least in part, for public outreach. Is that
That's right.
correct?
This is one of 2.
There you go.
So
That's right.
we have this meeting, then we had committed you all to 2 more meetings, one of which would be a public meeting again to get a bit more specific, and then to have a final meeting where the elected officials sit down together and hammer out the specifics around an agreement. Because of course, as you know, the IGA expires in February, and the town had asked us to look at alternatives and to move into a different mode of doing business with them. So that's what this is all about.
So I'm assuming At this point, we do not want the elected boards to give their opinions. We're gonna have a factual presentation, and then we're gonna hear
From
Un-
citizens.
Yeah.
we're gonna hear citizens' unprompted opinions. So we shouldn't really express
Yeah.
what we would like to see, because that might stifle the
Yes,
brainstorming
that-
sessions from the citizens.
That would be lovely. I can't tell you what to do, but I think that would work well.
So the suggestion is that we should listen twice as much as we speak because we have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Very good.
But one of my ears doesn't work very well, so.
Well, nor does
That
mine.
explains
so
a lot.
1.5 times.
Yeah, I
Fortunately,
think
it's
the
one
idea
on
is,
Tom's side.
but it is that this is really more of a listening session for you all and us.
You're over there too, don't laugh.
Yeah. So, and you'll have your chance as we move forward to
They
sit
both
down.
put their bad ear towards me, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
I think
but
we
they
have the
both-
same bad ear.
No,
don't we?
you do?
No, it's this one is
Yeah,
bad
we have the
for
same
me.
bad ear.
That's very
I can only
strategic.
hear Linda.
Oh.
You'll be happy
all I
to
need to
know,
hear.
Mr. Chair, that the
well.
my left ear is the one that is a lower hearing acuity.
Well,
Me too.
There's a pun. There's some humor inserted.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even get that. Thank you for that.
Okay, so that's Estes.
okay. So
And
the town
then-
board will be in attendance as well.
The town board will be in attendance
Are we
also.
having
and
dinner
so-
with them or anything like that? Are we having dinner with those guys or just by ourselves?
I don't know.
Are you
I can,
going,
I can
Linda?
get.
Yeah, I'm going.
Make sure
Yeah.
you figure out where the hell we're going and put it on
Yeah.
our calendars, right?
Good advice.
Wherever they want, we'll go.
Okay, we'll get that all sorted out. So, and then hearing today, you just have 3 consent items, so that we're not expecting anything unusual. But last time I said that, then something
Yeah,
got
don't
pulled,
say
so
that again, you'll
I won't.
jinx
I won't jinx it. And that's it for today.
Great.
Thank you for your good work, Leslie, and your team.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you in a bit.
Very well.
All right.